Have you ever gone to do a presentation and you're all prepared? You get up on stage and you look out in the audience and one guy's looking at his phone, another woman is trying to sneak out of the back. What's going on? Why aren't these people ready to go and leaning in and listening to me? Why aren't they listening? Has this ever happened to you? If so, stick with us for about 10 minutes and we'll talk about some ways that you can deal with the question, is my audience listening? Hi, I'm Christine Harper.
And I'm Ernie Davis.
And we're from Powerhouse Motivations. Let's talk about that, Ernie. Has that ever happened to you? You walk into a room, you're ready, you've been prepared, you're ready to give your speech, you get up on stage, and it looks like the audience is totally zoned out. They got somewhere else to be.
Christine, I've got to tell you, that's a common problem. I have felt it. I still feel it. But when I first got started speaking, I went out and I joined an organization to help me improve my public speaking. I joined a club, and one of the things we had to do is you had to take turns. We had to take turns getting up in front of the audience and speaking. And it's like every time I got up there, the first couple of times, you prepare your presentation, you write it out, you get it all written down on note cards, and it's perfect. You spend all night, all week working on it. Then you get up there and you've got it memorized word for word. You've got, the entire thing. And then you start speaking. And as you start speaking, you start wondering, I wonder if they like what I'm going to say. And you look out at the audience, and I'll never forget it. I'm standing up there in one of my, my best suits and ties, and I start talking, and I look out over there, and I notice a lady with her head down, looking at her cell phone. And then I look over, and somebody else is coming in the door, and somebody else is going out the door, and you start to get nervous, and you start feeling like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm boring. Are they really listening?
Oh yeah, it's happened to me more than once. Yeah. It's funny because sometimes people are distracted, and there are so many distractions out there nowadays that I learned to say, it's not me. I don't take it personally anymore. If they decide that they need to check their phone in that moment, they may miss something. But I also realize that sometimes you think they're not listening, but they are.
They are. They're always listening. I love it. They're always a listener. Even if they're looking away, their ears are still open. And I love it. Christian, I love to make lists, right? And if I had to make lists, because we're gonna help them get over this. And I think you just gave us a great point. And I think if we're making a list, and if I had a piece of paper, and I'd say, actually, we may just write it right here. Point number 1: don't take it personal.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah, no. Don't take it personal.
As long as you've prepared and you prepared and you've got a great presentation ready for them, their reaction is not your responsibility.
But I've also noticed that sometimes you have to engage the audience and you have to make it fun. You have to engage the audience and you have to make it fun. Because so often when they're, if they're drifting, if they're not paying full attention, one thing is that you just have to figure out, hey, how do I get that attention back? And there's a couple of techniques. There's one technique that somebody taught me a long time ago. I never thought this would work. I never thought it would work. They said, if you ever want to get the attention of a rowdy audience, or you got members in the audience who aren't listening, just be quiet. They said, stop speaking. I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, this there's no way this could work. And I figured if this is ever going to work, one time I'm giving a presentation at one of the high schools where I work with young men at. And, young men in high school, they have their attention spans and they start talking in the back of the room. And I said, you know what, I'm going to test this out. Because if this will ever work anywhere, if it works here, this will work anywhere. It will definitely work, in the boardroom. It'll work in the office environment. It'll work with your coworkers and your friends. And so the young men are talking, I'm looking back here in the back of the room. They're talking back there and they're having little side conversations back here. And we're talking about Frederick Douglass. So I just intentionally stopped talking. And see, as I stopped talking, you probably started wondering, what's going on? What is he going to say? What is he going to do? Those young men in that room, they stopped their side conversations. And before I knew it, they're all looking up at me. You know, I don't know if you've ever been in one of those classrooms where the teacher says, hey, when you're done, eyes on me. Mm-hmm. It was an eyes on me situation. I didn't even have to say eyes on me. They all started looking up at me. The next thing I did was clapped. Awesome. And we started talking and we went on about it. And I figured out, I was like, this really works. Mm-hmm. First thing, like you said, number one, don't take it personal. Number two, engage the audience or find a technique that you can use. For instance, be quiet.
Yes, that's my favorite technique. So it gets a little unruly, or it seems that no one's paying attention, or it just seems for whatever reason that the presentation has gone off track.
Yeah.
The best thing to do for me as a speaker is to stop, take a breath, and it's like hitting a reset button. You know, like in your bathroom when one of the circuit breakers flips, press that red button, and it resets. I have to do that for myself sometime. Even though I prepared the presentation and I know where I'm going, obviously everybody's not on board. I stop and continue.
I love
so in a way, it's similar to what you do. You were of course trying to gain the audience attention back, but sometimes you have to get your own attention back on track.
Yeah, you have to get over your nerves a little bit.
So the pause, I call it the pause, it can be very helpful in bringing me back.
Awesome. No, that's awesome. That is awesome. So I would definitely say, number one, hey, don't take it personal. People are going to drift. They're going to look around. They're going to want to get a little visual relief. They're going to want to see something, right? So number one, don't take it personal. Number two, make sure you interact. Find a way to engage with the audience. And, you know, one of the other things that I love to say is to use PowerPoints, use slides, use some type of visual aids, because eventually, you know, it doesn't matter how great a speaker you are, how good you are. Eventually, your audience is going to want to see something other than you. Regardless of how beautiful you are, or how great your attire, your suit may be, your shave may be great, eventually they're going to want to see something other than you. And one of the suggestions I normally tell people, use the visual aids. Use a PowerPoint. Use a PowerPoint. Use something. You know, put that PowerPoint up there, because what happens is, you know, they're looking down at their phones for visual relief, and you don't want them looking at their phone. So, you know, use a PowerPoint. And what I normally say is, you know, some people, they like to put a lot of notes on those PowerPoints, and they like to make it almost like note cards for them to help remember their speech. What I normally say is, no. The best PowerPoints I've ever seen had no words. They just had beautiful pictures. And here's what I like about this. I like it is because when you have the PowerPoints up and they're behind you or somewhere in your vicinity, when you look out at the audience, they're either looking at you or the PowerPoints and the pictures that you provided. And so you no longer have to wonder if they're utilizing their phones or doing something like that, because now it feels like you have their attention, even if it's only bouncing between you and the PowerPoint.
It's interesting you bring that up. I used to be in a technical field, and I would put so much information on the slides because I didn't want to forget the correct speeds and feeds. I didn't want to give somebody the wrong information.
Yeah.
So I figured if I wrote it on the slide and I knew it was right when I put it there, then the customer would get the right information.
Yeah.
Well, after a while, I realized, well, if I wanted to send them a book, I could just send them the book with all the right information in it, if that's what they want. But if they came to hear me interpret the information or speak about a solution, I needed to get them to pay attention to what was happening in the front of the room and not worry so much about the details that were on that slide.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I also had a situation where I was giving a presentation, and it was about, the theme was about being on time. And I told this story about going to the airport, and I get there a little bit late, and I trot down the runway, down the jetway rather, and I get to the front, and I'm looking eye to eye with the pilot.
Yeah.
The doors have been closed. He's backing out. He's ready to go. Yeah. And I'm late. But he looks at me standing there in this navy maternity dress. And I guess he takes pity on me. He stops the plane. They open the door and they let me board. Now, I always tell people, don't you try this today because you will be tackled by TSA if you walk down there.
That's so awesome. So you're telling me that the plane was actually at the gate. They were backing the plane up out of the gate, and they saw you coming down in your Navy dress. Yeah. Somehow they saw you coming down in your Navy dress. They stopped the plane, pulled it back up to the gate, opened the gate, and let you in.
And let me board.
Wow, that's awesome.
Okay, so what was interesting about that is at the end of my presentation that day, one of the audience members comes up to me and says, "Oh, Christine, I didn't know you were in the Navy." And I said, "Well, this guy wasn't listening. Was he listening? This had nothing to do with military." Mm-hmm. And then I thought back over what I had said, and I mentioned that I stood there in a Navy maternity dress, and he interpreted that as someone who was in the Navy.
I got to tell you what, I spent a long time in the Navy, and I can understand that, because if I would have heard you said that you were in a Navy dress, or being a Navy guy myself, if you said that, I would have like, wow, I didn't know she was in the Navy. Or she was in the Navy. And then if you told me that you were in a Navy maternity dress, I was like, wow, she even had her kids while she was in the Navy. Sometimes we think the audience isn't listening, but sometimes the audience is listening. And I think we've got it right. Number one, hey, don't take it personal. Number two, find a good way to engage the audience and get their attention back focused on you or your PowerPoints or your items that you bought. And I think the third one, you just summed it up right there in that story that you just shared, is to, make the message clear and concise. Make it clear and concise. And I think that means that you have to remember that certain words have connotations. When you kind of say that, the Navy dress, Navy guy, I'm thinking Navy.
I was thinking of the color blue, and that's what it was. It was a blue dress.
Yeah, it was a blue dress.
It was a good learning lesson, because everything that we think we're saying and conveying, people don't always hear what you intend to share.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to be cautious. You got to make that message clear. In the beginning, you said you would also put a whole lot of notes on your PowerPoint slide. Mm-hmm. I think, what I used to say is, don't worry about all those notes. The PowerPoints aren't for you. The slides, they're not for you. That's visual relief. That's eye candy for your audience. Keep the eye candy pretty, keep it attractive. If you're going to put some notes or a quote, keep it short and brief. And then the next thing, with the third point, make the message clear and concise. Make sure you remember that certain words have connotations to them. They have emotional meanings. You may say Navy dress. This guy's thinking Navy dress, United States Navy, the person on the ship, right? I once shared a story. Let me share this with you. I once shared a story. I was just telling a harmless story. It was about a dog, and everyone has had different experiences with dogs throughout their life. And, I'm trying to tell a very cute story. I thought it was so cute. I told a story of how I saw a young baby running in the backyard being chased by a dog. And as I looked out of the audience, I could see that one lady, she was starting to shake, right? Waiting to hear what happened and how did I respond. And another lady on the other side of the room, two ladies, I think they both had on blue suits, if I was going to be honest with you, right? And the other, she looked visibly pleased. It was almost as if she was going on a happy trip. And what I soon realized is the one lady, when she heard the word dogs chasing a baby, it brought back a negative picture of a dog chasing her baby and biting it on the leg. And the other lady, this is so amazing how these words really have meaning. The other lady, she was thinking about their puppy they have at home, the one who chases the kids around and licks them down and wrestles with them and bros with the kids in the grass. So same words, two different ladies, two different perceptions.
Yeah.
Just reminds me that we have to make sure the message is clear and concise for the audience that we're speaking to. If we're going to give some advice today, since we don't have a lot of time, but I think if we're going to leave them with anything, I think those 3 points are awesome. I think they're awesome, Christine. Number one, don't take it personal. Hey, people are going to get up, they're going to walk away, they're going to use the bathroom, they're going to eventually look at their cell phones, they're going to ask the person beside them, can they borrow a pen or a pencil? Don't take it personal. Then number two, hey, find a way to engage them and get their attention back on you, your props, or your PowerPoints, or your pictures. Yes. And then the last point in there, make sure that message is clear and concise.
one more thing I'll add is just because they're looking away or they look distracted, remember that phrase that I used, made you laugh?
I love that saying. Go ahead.
Ain't closed.
Every, say it one more time.
Every shut eye ain't closed.
Every shut eye ain't closed. I love that one. That is so true. I could probably take you back to my childhood, you know, because I know you probably experienced this when you were a kid. The adults would always say the good stuff. They would always have the good conversations when they thought the kids were playing or asleep. Oh my.
And so the same thing as adults. People are always listening, even when they're not giving you their full attention.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we've seen and we've experienced when we think about how the audience responds, and we're wondering, are they listening?
Yeah.
So,
you know, I think that carries over. We're gonna have to come back. We're gonna actually, Christine, we're gonna have to come back, and I think next time we have to talk a little bit more about, you know, did the audience really get it? Did they really get it? Okay. You know, that's what we're gonna have to talk about. I got a great story, so I would say, hey, join us back here, you know, so we can share that story. I don't know, Christine, what do you think?
Next Thursday, let's do it.
Let's do it next Thursday. Awesome. Hi, Christine.
So long.
So long.